Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. Welcome to the Good AI Fireside Chat. Today we're going to talk about digital identification and how artificial intelligence can help with digital ID management to address the sustainable development goals while ensuring users' privacy. My name is Caroline Lair and I'm the founder of the Good AI. To start, I'm going to give you a little context about the project and why I've decided to launch the Good AI end of 2020. I'm going to share a few slides with you now. Here we go. So I've been working in the tech industry for the last 10 years in software companies, mostly in creative and social industries. And I did a short passage in the VC industry that was super interesting, focusing on Internet of Things startups. But I was still looking for more sense and impact in what I was doing. And in 2018, I had the chance to start working in an AI startup led by Rand, which is with us today. And we were building a private by design voice assistant solution. And this is really when my journey with artificial intelligence began. And quickly, I got very passionate about the ethical aspect of it. And I also started a nonprofit named Women in AI, addressing the topic of gender inclusiveness in AI systems. I like to call myself an optimist when it comes to AI, because I'm really convinced we can achieve great stuff for humanity and for the planet with this technology, especially because of its ability to analyze a great deal of data, find patterns, and solve complex problems. I'm optimistic as well because I've been lucky enough to meet with fantastic entrepreneurs, scientists, and engineers, such as Juliet, Rand, and Charlie that we host today, that are committed to leverage AI responsibly to enhance our world. And I'm an optimistic person, but I'm not naive also when it comes to AI. Of course, it's not silver bullet, and it will take a village to drive what I call the AI revolution for good. And I think it really takes a lot of work to build trust in AI systems. And we're kind of running out of time. While we need to address urgent concerns such as global warming, pandemics, disinformation, but also historical concerns such as inequality or poverty, AI systems are created and deployed on a daily basis, shaping our future in an unprecedented manner. And that's why I've started basically the Good AI. We're working at building an ecosystem to empower and help companies and talents that use artificial intelligence responsibly to address the sustainable development goals. We do that through community, through contents and events. We also do events just today. And we're focusing to start on startups, and we're building this great community of more than 250 startups from 32 countries. So I invite you to visit our website, check our publications, some of the startups we support, check the job openings as well on our job board. And if you wish to join the community, you can also apply directly on the website as a company or as a talent. So today we're going to talk about the digital identification and the challenges that come with it. Why is that? Because the digital identification is key for sustainable development. However, today we have still around 1 billion people across the world that do not have basic proof of identity, which is essential to protect their rights and enabling access to basic services and opportunities, such as accessing healthcare, opening a bank account, getting education and employment. Some people have forms of identification, but they are insecure or not trusted by service providers. or they may also live in countries where identification systems are weak and not suited for the digital era. The use of digital ID is also super key to fight against financial crime and fraud, anti-money laundering, and terrorism. However, there are also dangers with the design and introduction of ID system. If actors fail to consider this risk, the ID system can threaten human rights, particularly the right to privacy, and they can become tool of surveillance by the state, the private sector. They can exclude rather than include. To dig in these topics, I'm very happy to welcome our three guests and founder that I'm gonna call now on stage. One sec. So here we have Charles, Rand, and Juliette. Many thanks for joining us today. So Juliette, Rand, and Charles run startups that are members of the Good AI. And so I'm very much looking to knowing more about how they address all these key topics. We're going to start with a short introduction of each of you, no more than 5 minutes, please. And then we'll start a conversation and end with a Q&A sessions at the end of this hour. So to all the participants, don't hesitate to start asking your questions in the chat on the left of the video. So let's start with Juliette. So you're the co-founder and CEO of Obol. Can you tell us a bit more about your company and what you're doing? Thank you.
Yes, so first of all, thank you, Caroline, to organize this webinar and to invite us. I'm very glad to be here today. I'm Juliette. So I co-founded Obol 3 years and a half now ago. Obol is an identity proofing provider. So our job is to allow a user online to easily onboard to a service, digital service. It can be banking, it can be jobbing, it can be renting cars, whatever you want. And to easily prove his identity online using his physical identity document. So we allow him to make easily little short videos of his IDs and of his face in a web environment. We guide him in order to those manipulations are easy, and we verify his identity with a combination of AI and identity experts, and we provide a service that is fast, easy to use. We provide 5 minutes answer 24/7, and we onboard thousands of users every day with a face-to-face equivalent security. And so you mentioned privacy. It's a very strong value at Obol. So we are a European company, so we have to comply with GDPR. But it goes further than that. It's truly a value in the company to protect the identity of user and make sure that we can be trusted with this personal information, and that we are really that we inform user and we allow them to understand what we do with their data, and basically they don't leave our servers. So it's something very important. You're right, Caroline. So
okay. Thanks, Juliette. Rand, you're the co-founder and CEO of Zama. Happy to know more.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rand. I'm an entrepreneur. Been doing this since I was a kid. I've gotten into machine learning in 2003, did a PhD in 2007. I had a machine learning company called Snips, where actually Caroline and I were working together, that got acquired in 2019 by Sonos. And I've now started a new company around homomorphic encryption, which is a new cryptographic technology where you can basically do machine learning over encrypted data.
Thank you, Rand.
Also, I'm also, for those of you entrepreneurs, I'm also a deep tech investor. So the more early stage, the more complicated your company, usually the more excited I get.
Thank you, Rand. Charlie, you're the founder and the CEO of Comply Advantage.
Yeah, awesome to be in the presence of such illustrious company from Juliet, Rand, yourself, Caroline. I think what we do is very complementary to Zama and Ubble. We have a database of terrorists and cartel members and criminals and politicians from around the whole world, and we build that using machine learning and AI. So we work with regulated companies across fintech, insurance, remittance, payments, any regulated entity across any country, and help them reduce the risk of terrorist financing and money laundering. I started the company back in 2014, and I guess we've raised now around $110 million. We have 300 people, and I guess our ambition now is to really scale the company and help eliminate terrorist financing and money laundering using machine learning.
Thank you, Charlie. So to start the conversation, I have kind of a basic question. So I mentioned basically that there was 1 billion people lacking basic identity proof. Do you think these people are going to jump directly to the digital IDs? Anyone?
I believe that in identity, we are seeing a lot of innovation and what we call leaps. So from developing countries that are jumping from directly to the most innovative and the most efficient solution. Digital identities are extremely important, and they should be used online, and they are going to be deployed in the developed world, and I believe also in the developing world. You still need to have some proof in the physical world. So I guess both comes together, and for sure they can take different forms. So in the digital world, cryptographic tokens are extremely efficient and should be more and more spread in the pockets, the smartphones, and so we push for decentralized mode, which I believe is more robust in terms of security and also is better for our democracies. And so yes, I believe developing worlds will innovate and show us efficient ways to do that. But I still believe that physical ID will remain because the physical world is still there. I know with the COVID we've not seen it a lot, but still it exists. So I see it more as companions. So going together.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's pretty clear that as we're moving everything online, there's going to be a need for digital identity and something that we can actually trust. I'm particularly concerned, for example, with deepfakes, which are making it extremely difficult to actually know that the person you're talking to is actually the person you're talking to. There was recently, for example, an attack where a hacker used a deepfake to pretend to be someone else on Zoom, and literally had a conversation with a politician pretending to be someone else. And so, if I'm calling you Caroline, right, and you think you're talking to me, but you're talking to, someone else just using AI to fake my face and my voice, you're most likely going to give information that you shouldn't. And I think that this is going to be a major challenge. I would actually put deepfakes as one of the biggest threats to society in the next few years, actually.
Great answers from Rand and Juliet, and awesome to learn more about those new technologies. Speaking from my perspective, so Juliet and Rand will do an awesome job at telling you, is this person who they say they are? But then the question for me is, are they bad? And for that, what you need to do is have data on every person and company in the world, but also have all the connections. And if you want to keep track of all 8 billion people in every company and every fact about them, there's too much information. So particularly if we're doing that at scale, so if you're a fast growing company and there are thousands of people all with the same name, Chinese, Arabic, Cyrillic names, and then there are connections. So they could be they could be a shareholder in a deep tech company linked to a terrorist group, or they could be a director of a company linked to the Taliban. Then you need to have a database that connects all these different groups and finds that risk. So that for us is where we come in. So we will help you find data where they're doing human trafficking, they're doing environmental crimes, they're a murderer, and hopefully prevent people like Jeffrey Epstein or Joe Lowe, who's stealing billions of dollars from emerging market companies around the world. So I think identity is really critical to things like corruption, terrorism, human trafficking, and generally making the world a better place. So I think what we're doing today is showing that AI can be used for good rather than for evil.
And that's one of the question I'm wondering. With an increasing number of people getting access to digital IDs, I guess we are at risk to see the rise of financial crimes attempts. And I'm wondering, are we ready for this? And the question is, are you rather positive that digitalizations and AI will enable to better fight financial crime than before? Or to the opposite, is it opening the door to smarter and more sophisticated frauds? I guess we're somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I personally loved Rand's point about the kind of adversarial attacks, right? So it is an arms race, and the same weapons are available to both of us, right? So the bad people and the good people both have access to deepfakes, to machine learning, to cloud computing, and you see the globalization and the specialization in the value chain. So different groups can just do one part of the value chain. I personally had a bank account created in my name. Someone created a Barclays account called Charles Abdul Qadir Delingol. They then bought 15 iPhones and then sold them same day. And so I had to go and get that all sorted out. So I think really we need institutions to adopt solutions like Ubble, like Zama, like Apply Vantage for anyone to have a chance, because technology is moving so rapidly and the incumbents aren't adopting those tools, but the bad guys are. So unless you use Ubble, Zama, Apply Vantage, then that's the only surefire way to meet your doom and to have the bad guys win.
Just to give you, I think it's an interesting figure that will build upon what just Charlie said and also what Rand said about deepfakes. So today, I said we verify tens of thousands of identity every day, and we see that on average, it's 6% of identities that are fraudulent online. That we need to refuse because there is an effective fraud. So people that are presenting identities that are not themselves. So impersonation, counterfeit IDs. So it's 6%. It represents billions lost in the economy, and it's often bad guys. So sometimes we see a lot of kids. Like for instance, we're working on the financing of banking of teenagers. So we see kids that are going at night and getting the IDs of their parents. So this is quite cute and fun, but sometimes it's pretty bad guys. That the one Charlie is basically putting in a list. So we make sure that we don't provide them financial means, so they do their bad plans. So it's there is threats, but the digital economy is also an amazing opportunity for everybody. We talked about people that don't have identities, people that are unbanked, like people that don't have access to health. So the digital worlds, of course, come with specific risk, but there are people like us that are working on those threats and that are putting in place barriers that will protect everybody. So it's what we do, and it allows the rest of the economy, the good guy, representing 99% of us. Most of us are good, hopefully, and then they can use those services easily and without worrying with the threats. But what we do, I believe, is important.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for Rand. So you're both an avid defender of privacy and also an AI entrepreneur and enthusiast. So how do you envision a world in which our banks and state service will use computer vision, NLP, and other AI techniques to check our identity and condition this to let people enjoy basic needed services? Is there a trade-off to do, like between privacy and access to development? What does it take? Like, so you have one technology that can be a solution, but I guess it's not enough. How do you envision this feature?
Right. So I think, one of the most common way that people are going about authenticating at the moment is using some kind of biometric authentication, facial recognition, fingerprints, voice prints, things like that. The problem when you're doing biometric authentication is that someone somewhere needs to keep a database of your biometric templates, basically the real identity, your passport, for example, so that when you're trying to authenticate, you can match against this database and you can say whether that person is or not in this database. The problem with having such a service is that whoever manages this database, well, first of all, now has an entire database of very sensitive data that if anybody can steal, will be able to use to impersonate anybody else. But they also know every single authentication request coming in. So not only do they have the identity of everyone, they also know how often and for what reason people have been authenticated, both of which are major, major privacy concerns. And so naturally, I think today, there is a very big push towards creating secure biometric authentication. So what we do at my company, homomorphic encryption, is actually one of the solutions that people are using or are looking at for doing this. Homomorphic encryption enables you to keep the data encrypted during processing. So what you would do is you would encrypt the biometric database and you would do a blind authentication request against this database. So whoever is managing the database doesn't have access to the biometric data because it's encrypted. And they also don't know what authentication requests were made against the database. So everything is completely blind, completely in the dark. And so this is really interesting, right? Because you could offer the same service without having to worry about securing the biometric database, without having to worry about the privacy of knowing who's been authenticating and things like that. So of course, the only reason why people have not yet been using this is because this kind of technology was not yet ready. But this has changed in the past couple of years, and we're now actually starting to test some of those services. And we can expect the first encrypted biometric authentication systems to be live next year.
I'm curious to understand if what you're doing could apply, for instance, to anything that Hubble is doing or Comply Advantage is doing, or if this is super complementary.
Well, I would say that homomorphic encryption, the idea is really that anything you're doing automatically in the cloud can now be done encrypted and completely blind. So as a service provider, if you have to manipulate sensitive data, you can now basically do it completely blindly and therefore no longer need to be responsible for securing this data. So I would say that the only limitation is if a human needs to intervene and look at the data, in which case it becomes a little bit complicated to make it encrypted, obviously. But if you're going to be using artificial intelligence, machine learning, if you're going to be doing everything completely automated, then technically speaking, you could do it encrypted end to end, and therefore not have to worry about securing your servers or about any government hacking into your database or any hacking group stealing the data and putting it on the internet. I think it's a really different way of thinking about securing data because you just don't have to anymore.
it definitely makes sense to us, because, as I said, when you verify the identity of people, then you can think about issuing digital tokens regarding their identities, so preferably a decentralized approach, and then they will need to authenticate. So there are several ways to authenticate. There are passwords, there are biometrics, you can use behavioral. Also, you can do it based on different kind of signal that can be technical. So I know this guy, I know his IP, I know his OS, I know his geolocalization, so it looks like him. But biometric is really user friendly. It's strong, and but it's highly personal. So if we can protect personal data this way, I think it's very interesting. So actually, I posted it to my CTO while Ren was talking. So I think it's interesting, and it's, I guess he has heard about it. I did not, and I find it very interesting for us.
So just in terms of like homomorphic encryption, I tried reading the Wikipedia article. I tried reading stuff, but I still have no idea what it is. If possible, like, and I have no idea how it works or what it is. So like, I'm sure most of the audience don't as well. But like, if you can make it simple enough for me and my mum to understand, I'd love to come away from the webinar to understand what it is. But I have no idea what it is.
You
Sure,
and
of
your
course.
dad also.
I mean, so let's imagine for a second that you're a company and you're, let's say, offering some kind of like photo editing tool in the cloud. Okay, so the way that your users would access it is they would go on your website, they would upload a picture, they would then use your web app to manipulate it, and then you would send them back the modified picture. So what this means is that you, as a service provider in the cloud, actually have the user's picture because they've sent it to you so that you could manipulate it. So of course, you now as a service provider are responsible for securing this data. If someone is sending picture of their kids, it's your responsibility to make sure that this picture doesn't get outside. With homomorphic encryption, the user would encrypt their picture before sending it to you. But the way that it's been encrypted still enables you in the cloud to actually manipulate it. So you can apply filters on it, you can rotate it, you can do whatever you typically do with pictures, but you're now doing it on the encrypted image completely blindly. But the result you send back, of course, is encrypted as well. The user can decrypt it. So from a user's perspective, nothing's changing. He's sending a picture, getting a response, but you now as a service provider are doing everything completely blindly. You actually don't have the picture, you have an encrypted version of the picture.
So we'll be able
it's like a black box.
having it.
Sorry?
So like you wouldn't be able to do homomorphic encryption on text. Like you wouldn't be able to do it with, let's say, like a name, right? You couldn't do that.
Anything that's an algorithm could be done homomorphically because the data is coming in encrypted and the output's coming out encrypted. So like, for example, if you wanted to do a voice assistant, let's say Alexa, right? Right now you would send your voice to Amazon, who would then process it and send back a response. Here you could send an encrypted voice. Amazon would do an encrypted natural language analysis of your voice. So it doesn't know what you're asking. It also doesn't know what it's telling you back. It's because the response itself is also encrypted and you can basically decrypt it. So think about it like end-to-end encryption, where it's not just about sending the data, it's also about being able to do processing on the encrypted data. So I think the important thing is for the user, nothing changes. Actually, don't even have to know. Potentially, this could be like done at the internet protocol level. It's something that your browser could basically automate for you when you're connecting to a website that's compatible with homomorphic encryption. And as a service provider, the good thing about it is nobody cares where the processing happens. You could do it in China, and the government could have access to your servers physically. They still wouldn't be able to get the user data because the encryption key would never be sent to your servers. It would remain with the user on his own device. So it's it's a technology people have been trying to make work for like 40 years. It just didn't up until literally last year. So it's very, very new.
Very cool.
Talking about the tech itself, the AI, different AI techniques you guys are using. Charlie, maybe could you explain a bit more? Like you mentioned NLP the other day. So which kind of AI?
Yeah, it's a lot simpler than homomorphic encryption, which I think is way too complex for me. But yeah, basically what we're doing at my advantage is basically, so you type in a name into the system. So you type in Caroline Lair, and it says Caroline is linked to the Taliban. She has shareholdings in a North Korean weapons factory. Some of her directorships are with like Kalashnikov in Russia. Super dodgy. Don't do business with her. And then it says Rand Hindi. Yeah, director of a company. No adverse media. No political connections. You can do business with him. And so what we're doing is monitoring hundreds of thousands of data sources in real time, multiple languages. So the NLP element is natural language processing. So we'll look at, say, the SEC website, and it will say Rand Hindi accused Juliette Delano of child trafficking, but was acquitted. And therefore, like, whereas typically our competitors, like companies like Reed Elsevier, WorldCheck, Dow Jones, they'll have a kind of keyword Boolean based, like, so Juliette Delano fights against corruption, or and they'll have researchers who manually compile information. So what we're doing is using like multi-label classifiers, right? So we can tag attributes to a person, and we'll have profiles. But then there's also a kind of very deep well of technology around knowledge graphs and NLP and entity resolution, right? So we need to resolve, is this Rand Hindi the same person as that Rand Hindi? And so what we've basically done is build a team of hundreds of engineers, but obviously a kind of 10 times engineers, much better than modern engineers. So we work with like some of the best experts in the world doing this. And so we've got hundreds of companies with whom we partner to build a map of every person and company in the world, but kind of more around, not is this person Juliette, more, we know Juliette exists, but the question is she bad? And is this company she's linked to bad? Who are her associates? And that's primarily useful for not getting fined billions of dollars and being involved in money laundering. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot simpler than the stuff Rand does, but hopefully it adds some value. That's it.
Caroline, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. And so, from what I understand, so you are working with Hubble? How does it work? How do you?
Fantastic partnership with Juliette. Yes.
Yes. So as Charlie said, we are very complementary. So basically, we verify the identity of the people. We make sure that he's not impersonating or saying a fake name, and then we say that to Charlie, and then he will check if you can trust him and if he's a good guy. And at Hubble, we also use a lot of AI, but maybe I can. So do you want me to elaborate on that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, when we started the company, we faced an issue is that you don't have a lot of data sets of videos of IDs that are associated clearly with videos of face. You don't have data sets like that. So you can't start directly with machine learning. It's what we call a cold start. And it's very specific in terms of AI. So what we did is that we worked first on very classical algorithm based on old math. With computer vision scientists that combine basically those algorithms to recognize thousands of different type of identity, extract text, do fashion matching, etc. So we have plenty of algorithm, as Charles, I guess, for every check that we do on an identity verification. Then we started building operations. So we trained identity experts. So we make sure that our algos have good performance. So we didn't start by saying, okay, we will see the results. We have algos that have not been trained. So we put them in like a training room with identity experts that were saying that we're providing feedbacks. Basically, this is good, this is not good, etc. So algorithms started to be better and better. And so we did continuous learning on production, and we did it on rotating data sets, because basically you can't store personal data of people like forever. Of course, we don't do that. So at one point, you have to scrap all this data. So you train for a little bit of time, the time you are allowed to do, and you have informed the user that you are doing that, and then you scrap. So that's the process. And it appears that there are some verification, like if you want to check holograms on different kind of identities, it's quite hard to do it automatically, because it depends on the lights that you receive, it depends on the camera of the user, it depends on the identity type, it depends on the angles on which he moves, and then you have a lot of diversity. And even if you get some data, it's very hard to train an algorithm on this specific problem, because it's not specific enough at the end. So we decided that we will keep human in the loop on those very specific checks that where AI are not as good as we want them to be. And then we have a lot of automatic checks now, and humans intervene on chosen tasks. So we keep our promise to provide a face-to-face equivalent. In the future, I believe we can do everything automatic and learn in AI. We will still need a human eye sometime, because you want to check that your AI is not having a big hole in terms of security. So you want to have some, at least on a portion of your videos, you want to have a human eye. So you can measure basically the performance of what you do. Otherwise, you're completely blind. So cold start, training in production with rotating data sets. Some algorithms succeed, some didn't. So still a human in the loop for some time. And in the future, only on little portion to measure performance of algorithm, because you need labeling. That's what we do in terms of AI and computer vision. And basically, I find it so interesting and exciting. I love this side of the job. I'm not involved enough now in this part, but when we started, I spent a lot of time with researcher, and it was so fun. Now I spend a lot of time in selling and in webinars, and joking.
You're muted, Caroline.
Thank you. One question I had, so right now you deployed mostly in developed countries in Europe. So I guess you have to fit with the local compliance. And so I think so your solution is fit to go anywhere, to go global, as you were saying the other day. So how are you gonna manage other level of compliance? For instance, I'll say in some countries of Africa, how are you gonna adapt?
Who are you asking the question? Is it to me or?
Yes, to you.
To me? Okay. So I'm not as lucky as Charlie, because basically sanction lists and politically exposed persons, it's very standardized, and basically most of the countries are following what we call the FATF rules. So it's something that is worldwide, and it's and it's quite clear, and you can go global directly. At Hubble, verifying identity, we are global. So we cover 2,600 different identity types. We can go everywhere in the world, Africa, Latin America, Europe. But in terms of compliance for identity verification, it's something quite new. And it did not exist truly in the physical world. The job of Charlie was existing for years ago. Basically, it's quite old. So the way he addressed it is not old, and it's very innovative, but the business is quite old. And on our side, it's not. So it's not standardized. Regulation is starting. There are standardization efforts, but we're not there yet. And maybe it's good because it allows space for innovation. So in Europe, standardization is going fast, and we have been lucky to see the opportunity to work on video KYC very early because we started 3.5 years ago, and now it's going mainstream in Europe. So it's good for us because we are one of the first to have an industrial solution, and now we are quite focused on deploying it commercially and making it scale in Europe, where our value added is huge. Still, it can be used in other geographies. For instance, in Latin America, where I understand there are quite a lot of fraud going on right now in the digital world. And basically everywhere where you need trust in an identity verification. But compliance is not really ready there. So we have opportunities, we are looking at them, but commercially speaking, we are more focused on Europe right now. But we can go global. It's just a matter of priority.
Okay, thank you. So Charlie, Juliette said that you eventually your job was kind of old, but you were addressing with a very new
Yes.
innovative way. What is the biggest challenge you're facing today, like in terms of tech?
So I think on the question of like why it's old, right? So I think like 10 years ago, like the bank was a physical interaction in a branch, and that's been divorced, and now it's like an interaction on a phone. But now I guess data's opening up, and now banks will lose their connection to customers in terms of data too, right? So suddenly you have this entirely new financial landscape. So the technical challenge is like, I mean, personally, I have it does financial services, like, hundreds of like credit cards and accounts and connections, and like fintech is just exploding, right? So it's no longer a question of like one bank, it's a question of like thousands of service providers, and each of those could be a potential attack vector for money laundering. So I guess the challenge that we face is, how do you monitor like this exponentially exploding amount of data in terms of like from all over the world, in Cyrillic, in Chinese, as globalization intensifies, people move all over the world. Like it could be triads, it could be Colombian drug gangs, it could be the Yakuza, and like companies can operate all over the world. So I think like, how do you ensure that you can scale with integrity? And the only way is through AI and machine learning, keeping track of that data, and just, I guess, rather than having thousands of false positives, just getting that one true positive, as in a huge like haystack of risks, and actually this thing is the thing you need to care about. This client is pushing loads of money to ISIS, or pushing loads of money to Jeffrey Epstein, and trafficking underage girls from like Eastern Europe, right? I think so. The challenge is, of the billions of potential threats, how do you isolate the one risk? And we aren't using homomorphic encryption, we're using other forms of AI. So that's what we're doing.
Thank you, Charlie. Anyone has questions or not yet? So as I'm wondering now, what are the big next step for you and your companies in the next 12 months? And I'd like to start with Rand. And by the way, Rand, so it's very early now, as you were mentioning. It's still a very new technology. So how do you envision like any business model coming further, or is it still too early?
No, actually, it's pretty clear. So we created a company a little bit over a year ago. We spent the first year effectively building the technology. Nobody had ever done it like we do it before. We're now spending this year making sure that people who know nothing about cryptography can actually use it off the shelf. So effectively, our users, we anticipate, are going to be data scientists and developers. So we're now packaging everything in a way where data scientists can make their models homomorphic, even though they have no idea how this works and how things happen behind the scenes. We're also doing our first pilots and major partnerships, which should actually give us an idea of what is the right way to price something like that. The particularity about Zama is that everything we do is open source. And so we've built the entire business to be open source by design. And we're basically copy pasting the business model of open source databases using a dual licensing system with support and premium features. So I don't know, how much we can make or like what's going to be the exact price point and everything. That's what we're going to figure out next year. So 2022 is going to be about understanding the business model. So we're fortunate that we've raised over 10 million euros as a seed round. So we've got plenty of runway. But still, the goal is not just to build cool tech, it's for people to use it. And that means having technology that works, that's done. Having a product that people can use without knowing how it works, almost done. And then finding a business model that makes sense for companies who want to use it, which is what we're going to figure out next year.
All right, thank you. Juliette, I have the same question for you.
Okay.
If you are actively hiring, because at the Good AI we also have a community of talent eager to find the next job in AI company that works on something related to SDGs and development.
Okay, great. So we are hiring, and we have job position in sales and engineers and identity experts positions. So basically, what we want to do. So we have this service that is working well, that converts well in terms of identity verification online. That is secured and equivalent to a face-to-face, and that is really, really working well. So we are deploying it in France mainly today. So we are going to be certified, and we want to be the first identity proofing provider to be certified by a governmental body, which is important in the identity business. So this has been a bit painful in terms of security and transforming the organization, but it was important, and it's nearly done. So that's good. So we want to expand, to improve further our conversion UX. We work always on that on the product side. We need to do a big scale in terms of operations. So we have the tools for that, and we have done already several scales to reach tens of thousands of identity per day, but we want to do much more. So it will be another step for us. We also want to work on partnership to go abroad, and especially outside in European Union, where our technology are compliant and can bring value to customers. So that's why we are working with Charlie's teams, especially on the Europe, so Spain, Italy, Belgium, Germany, we comply with those regulations, and there are great opportunities for us there. But direct selling is a challenge, but partnership can accelerate. So basically, it's that we have already raised 10 million euros, and we will have to look at more opportunity regarding that. So if we want to expand in Europe and accelerate, this is a business where there is a lot of competition. I believe since the pandemic, 1 billion has been raised worldwide in 1 year in our business by startups. So it's going crazy. The market is huge. We are talking about huge market with huge strategic interests for large companies and also for governments. So something that is really looked at, that it's strategic. And if you want to go in this race, you have to put some money in the table. So we are playing the game.
Fantastic. And finally, Charlie?
So yeah, like everyone else, we're also raising industrial quantities of capital. So we announced our 70 million series raise from Goldman Sachs last week. A big war chest. And what are we doing with it? We're hiring. Cheers. Thanks for that. We're also I think if you read the Netflix culture deck, right? As a company gets bigger, you need great people, because otherwise you resort to bureaucracy process, right? So, and in terms of advanced AI, machine learning, a lot of this is brand new, and the best engineers, very, very expensive. You need to be world class, and therefore, I think key thing for us is hiring amazing people, and who can operate independently. So we're bringing on board some amazing BB data science, CTOs, people who have real depth of experience. And for us, the Comply data set encompasses every person, every company in the world, every fact about them, every connection. And so we're just constantly deepening, broadening that stack, and also trying to make it global, omnipresent, and just the de facto go-to data set for the whole world. So we're kind of tiny in that context. So we're trying to just be the best at what we're doing here, but still it's even though it is niche, it is a multi-billion-dollar niche. So we want to hire 80 more engineers. We're hiring basically one a week this week, and they're all kind of world-class, right? They're ex-Amazon, Facebook, Google. So yeah, it's just the beginning, right? So I'm sure come back to this YouTube video in 3 years' time, hopefully, even though we raised at a few hundred million valuation, it's still tiny compared to where we'll be in 3 years' time.
Awesome. Well, guys, it's been a super, super cool hour of discussion with all of you. Maybe, Ron, you want to add something? So you were on mute.
No, I mean, I guess also, that we're hiring quite quickly. We've grown from 4 to 25 people in a year during COVID, and we're probably going to hire another 20 people this year. Most of the people we hire are, in technology, but we are hiring people in machine learning right now. Out of 25 people, I would say that 20 are, cryptographers, obviously, because this was the first focus, but this is changing. We're now looking for everything from machine learning scientists to, data engineers to, marketing people. So if you're interested in privacy and machine learning and AI, reach out. I'm very easy to find, and looking forward.
We're also adding a lot of your jobs on the Good AI job board, so feel free to check all this. And so yeah, we're reaching the 7 p.m. here. I really want to thank all of you. It's been super interesting, super intense, and various in terms of understanding of all the topics around digital IDs through your different angles and your different companies. And I'm super confident we're gonna go through this revolution of digital IDs, respecting privacy as much as we can with teams like yours. If you want to add anything else, so we're just going to say bye to our audience and wishing you a very nice evening and day.
Thank you, everyone, and looking forward to talking to you online somewhere else.
Thank you,
Thanks, Charlie.
Charlie.
Thanks, Juliette. Thank Caroline. That was great.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Caroline.
everyone.
Great organization and great association. I
Thank
love
you,
with
guys.
AI.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you and congrats. Bye.